Welcome to your college-bound kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Linda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. Good afternoon, friends. A lot has happened since I last met with you on Thursday. I've driven over 1,600 miles in the last few days. I've never done that before. Returning from Pagosa Springs after 19 days there. And just thank God I can drive with a healthy knee. I drove through New Mexico, through Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. I stayed overnight in Shamrock, Texas. That was fun. And the next day, Memphis, Tennessee. That was great. And the last day, Anniston, Alabama. Some of the highlights on my way back from the trip. Santa Fe. If you haven't been to Santa Fe, you got to get to Santa Fe. It's like being in Mexico. But the architecture, it's just such a unique place. Really enjoyed my time in Santa Fe. Also in Memphis, I visited Rhodes College. It's my second time visiting Rhodes, but the last time was 9 years ago. For some reason, the beauty really hit me this time. Rhodes really does belong in that conversation for the most beautiful college in America. I really, really believe that. And the state of Tennessee should be proud having Sewanee and Rhodes, two very fine liberal arts and science schools, and two beautiful, beautiful, just gorgeous campuses all in the same state. Similar architecture, by the way, so it just really resonated with me. The places, both of them, just gorgeous. And then I stopped at UAB. I visited UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, yesterday, and I tell you what, it lives up to its reputation. Literally 5 hospitals touch that campus. Just a powerhouse school for anybody interested in health sciences and careers. So earlier in the trip, lots of highlights. Dave paid up. He paid up and he treated me to Fogo de Chao. Did a steak dinner and then took me to the jazz club. And Kelly Brainer, shout out to her. She treated me to Giordano's, which when I lived in Chicago is my favorite pizza. You get the big Chicago thick style pizza. Now that I'm on this strict diet, I couldn't have enjoyed myself. So I'm glad I got to enjoy myself there. But just a fantastic trip. Great family reunion. But home, sweet home. 28 days on the road. I told Anitra, I said, I've learned how to be married again. I've been gone so long. But just a lot of excitement there. Now, if your head is not spinning with my travels, I've got 2 more trips coming up. Karis is spending a lot of time with my mother in Canada. And she's like, it's my only living grandmother left. She's 84. I want to spend as much time with her as possible. So I said to Karis, I'm like, well, why don't you sublease your apartment? An apartment just sitting there in Charlotte. Cordelia's, to be technical, North Carolina, just outside of Davidson, outside of Charlotte. And then I said, wait a minute, why don't I sublease it from you? I can stay in your apartment and visit all the Charlotte colleges. So Lisa and I are going to be visiting a couple of Charlotte schools coming up together, University of North Carolina at Charlotte and Queens College. And I'll stay around and visit some more North Carolina schools. So that's coming up the last part of August, first part of September. And then there's a big bash for my mom's 85th. So she lives in Southern Ontario. So all of us will go there. Nitra Karistroy will fly into Buffalo, be there from the 27th of September to the 1st of October. So those are my next 2 trips. But let's talk about today. It's a special episode. It's the Big 350. That's right. We are more than a third of the way to 1,000. And as long as I have breath in my body, we're going to get to 1,000. And so to me, it's a special episode, 350. And I'm going to ask a favor of our listeners. I'm going to ask everybody who's listening to tell somebody about our podcast. And I know what so many of you are thinking right now. I already told someone about your podcast. And I'm going to ask you to tell somebody else. Each one, reach one. Each one, reach one. Does social media count? Absolutely. You want to put it out there on social media? But we have a goal here at Your College Bound Kid. It's our motto. It's our mission. It's making college knowledge available to all. That's right, making college knowledge available to all. But it's a team effort, and you're a big part of that. We grow as you spread the word. So will you take the challenge? Will you tell someone you haven't told about our podcast? I was going to say this week. I'll say in the month of August. We'll give you the month of August. I hope you'll take us up on our challenge, because that's the only way we can achieve our goal of making college knowledge available to all. Okay, let's talk about today's episode. I'm going to be sharing with you something that's been on my heart for a long time to share, and I explicitly and intentionally kept it for episode 350. I'm kind of sentimental that way. I'm going to talk about what I think is the most underrated factor that influences admissions decisions. And then, of course, we'll have the final part of Lisa's outstanding interview, Dr. Jenni Griffin, the Dean of Apex at the College of Wooster. Okay, let's turn our attention to the most underrated factor that influences admissions decisions. If I were to ask you, what matters the most when colleges make admissions decisions besides the academic assessment? So let's exclude the academic assessment. What do you factor into the academic assessment? You know, grades, rigor, test scores, grade trends, the school you're coming from. Just take some of those quantifiable factors and remove just the quantifiable, the numbers part. You know, we talk about numbers and voice. Let's talk about removing the numbers piece. I believe if I asked most people this question, just from my experience, the answer I would hear would be extracurricular activities. Extracurricular activities. And there's no doubt about it, extracurricular activities can have a big impact on who's admitted, who's not, especially if a student is a recruited athlete or recruited for the arts. And not only that, I mean, I think of a couple of students I worked with this year. One was 7th in the country in comedy, rated 7th. And no doubt that helped that student in their application process. Another student was ranked 7th in debate. No doubt that helped that student. We also have people on the other extreme with no involvement at all. There's no doubt that that hurts those students. But the majority of people, you know, they have different activities and things they do. Maybe they're part of the Key Club or the DECA Club or the National Honor Society. And all too often, it's not necessarily dispositive in terms of where they are admitted and where they're not. So extracurriculars are important, but sometimes I would argue, I think people think they carry a bigger, more weight than they actually do in terms of where you're admitted, where you're not. And I'm not trying to undermine their importance. Someone else out there is saying institutional priorities, and there's no question how important institutional priorities are. There's no question, and we've talked about that, though, quite a bit on this podcast. So absolutely, a school's got a new initiative to recruit more rural students. You happen to be a rural student, that's going to redound to your benefit. School's got an initiative to try to recruit more males into their counseling program or their nursing program, or recruit more women into math and science, or try to expand its geographic reach, or go after more Pell Grant students or more first-gen students, or they launch a new program in a whole new area and they're looking for students to fill that program, or they've got undersubscribed majors and they're worried about having to lay off the German faculty or others in the language department, and they've got their antenna up for people interested in some of those undersubscribed majors, and could go on and on and on and on and on. Institutional priorities is huge, but we've talked about that a lot. Something else I want to talk about today that I think is the most underrated factor that influences admissions decisions. And I'm referring to what admission officers often refer to as the PQs. That's right. We've had it before as admissions vernacular. PQs Our regular listeners, those in listening family, know what I'm talking about. Personal qualities. Look at it this way. There are 168 hours in the week. You're in school for maybe 15. I mean, 12 is considered full-time. So let's say you're 15. Let's even say you're taking 17, 18 credits. You sleep 7 hours a night. Do you realize a student taking 18 credit hours, sleeping 7 hours a night, still leaves 101 hours out of 168 in the week when you're not in class and you're not asleep? And what so many colleges are asking themselves is, how is your character going to elevate our campus in those 101 hours? And once again, I used a student taking 18 credit hours as my example here. I know what some of you are thinking, Stuck, well, what personal qualities do colleges like? That do they value? And I know someone else is saying, how do they determine what your personal qualities are? Well, we'll get to both of those in a second. I'm just going to mention some of the personal qualities that are extremely important. And by the way, personal qualities could also be an institutional priority on the part of the school too. So those two, there can be confluence between the two. This is not an exhaustive list. I literally sat down for 5 minutes and just wrote the ones down that popped into my head immediately. And I'm going to just list them in the order that they popped into my head. It doesn't make them more important. Number 1, kindness. I've heard more than one admission officer say, what really makes a student stand out to me is when I see kindness. Kindness. Number 2, grit and resiliency, the ability to get back up when you're knocked down. Number 3, the ability to build relationships across socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, gender, religious, and cultural barriers. Number 4, adventuresome spirit, the willingness to step outside your comfort zone and try new things. Number 5, personal integrity, honor, truthfulness, trustworthiness. Number 6, optimism. See the glass half full or half empty? Number 7, intellectual curiosity, innate love of learning. Number 8, work ethic, hard worker. Number 9, ambition and motivation. Number 10, creativity. Number 11, empathy. Number 12, listening skills. Number 13, sense of humor. Number 14, leadership. And number 15, compassion. Those are just the 15 things that popped into my head, just spending 5 or 10 minutes just reflecting on what personal qualities did you value when you were at admissions, and do you know that admission officers value? And once again, not an exhaustive list, but those are the 15 that popped into my mind. Now, one thing I've made a habit of doing is just asking admission officers, and I like to do this at particularly more selective schools, what percentage of the students that apply are academically qualified? And I hear a number on the high side, 90, and the low side, 65. In fact, one of the highlights of my trip was my visit to the University of Chicago. I really had a fantastic visit there on the 12th of July when I was staying with Dave for those 4 days. And after the information session, the tour, I got to spend a half an hour with the senior level rep. And this was a question that I asked her. What percentage of the students are academically qualified? She said 65. So that's about the low end that I see, 2 out of 3. And the number has gone down a little bit since test optional admissions has spread, because I'm a supporter of test optional admissions, but one of the things the test score did do is ferret out some people. They would see, let's say they look at a school and they see that the average test scores are 1310 and they had a 990. They would say, I'm probably not going to get in, so not apply. They saw the test score as maybe a red light or sometimes a yellow light. And now they don't have that. Just, I'm using a driving illustration. Yellow light, be careful. Red light, slam on the brakes, stop. They don't have that anymore. So they'll just go ahead and apply. In some cases, that's good. But grades and testing are collinear. So a lot of times a student will not have the test scores, but they also don't have the grades or the rigor. So they're not admitted. So schools are seeing a higher percentage of students that are not as academically qualified, but it's not huge. I don't know the number. Maybe it's 5% maybe. Enough so that Yale implemented a system of not having their readers read every file exhaustively for non-competitive applicants. They basically created a system where they could quickly determine who had a chance and direct those non-competitive applicants to a quicker decision rather than have, their previous method, because they'd seen a rise in non-competitive applicants. So there is a rise, but maybe it's dropped the school from 80 to 75 or 75 to 70. Actually, in the case of Chicago, I asked them this question. They didn't really feel that they had seen a difference. I said, I would have told you 65% 3 to 5 years ago, Mark, if you asked me the same question. So, then again, Chicago hasn't been test optional since about 2018. So maybe that's the reason for them having not seen any real difference compared to other schools, which are seeing a difference since the pandemic. But the point is, the overwhelming majority are academically qualified, whether they're talking about 2 out of 3 or 9 out of 10. And therefore, what are they turning to make those decisions? Institutional priorities, absolutely huge. Extracurriculars can be dispositive, but not as often as people think, from my experience working with students. There are way more people that communicate to me and feel like it's going to be their extracurriculars that are going to be the reason they get in or not get in versus their PQs. That's why I call it underrated, the most underrated. What are 3 ways schools use to determine, do you have the PQs we're looking for? Well, one is recommendations. One reason why schools absolutely love recommendations that require them, it's what they learn about the personal qualities of the student through the recs. Huge. Second way, the student voice. The student voice, the student voice. The personal statement. One thing you can do, there's a number of schools that have published the best personal statements that they've received. And they're on their websites, admission section of their websites. Tufts has it, Connecticut College has it, Johns Hopkins has it. And one of the things that's great, when you read those personal statements, they give commentary from the admission officers. And read what they're saying. They're making extractions about the personal qualities the student has, or lack of qualities. Normally it's the positive qualities, because these are positive essays they're showcasing here. So the personal statement is absolutely one of the ways schools figure out what your personal qualities are. College-specific questions, same thing. Some schools have video submissions, same thing. Third thing, interviews or any memorable interaction that the admission officer has with the student. So let's say, for example, you have a student on a fly-in program. A lot of times on a fly-in program, the admission officers will meet the students at the airport in a van, let's say, and then there's conversations. There's mealtime. I'm counting all of that. Or let's say, most people don't do flying programs. I'll use another example. Let's say you go to a college fair and you go by and talk to a school and there's very few people at that booth. You have a 15-minute conversation with the admission officer, which happens, especially at schools that don't get a lot of people visiting the booth, or it's a smaller fair. Well, there's highly likely that admission officer will remember that conversation. Well, that's an opportunity to learn about your personal qualities. So, I would argue actually that so many of the essays, go back to that point, the essays, and may I be so bold as to say the majority of them, are designed to suss out what personal qualities you as a student or as an applicant are bringing to our campus. So if you're a parent of a 10th grader, 9th grader, 11th grader, you're listening to this, work on building character in your student. Kindness, grit, resiliency, the ability to build relationships across socioeconomic, racial, ethnic, gender, religious, and cultural barriers, an adventuresome spirit, personal integrity, optimism, intellectual curiosity, work ethic, ambition and motivation, creativity, empathy, listening skills, humor, leadership, and compassion. It will not only help you in the admission process, but it'll help you in the school of life long after college. And isn't that really what it's about? The school of life.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, hopefully you heard part 1 and part 2 of Lisa's interview with Dr. Jenni Griffin, the Dean of Apex at the College of Wooster. If you haven't heard part 1 and part 2, strongly encourage you to go back and listen. But in our final part, Jenni starts out talking about the College of Wooster. She talks about their mentored research projects that every student does and how they work. She talks about the type of student that makes for a great student at the College of Wooster. And then she talks about how most students are going to have multiple careers in their lifetime. And then Lisa puts Jenni on the hot seat. Listen and enjoy.
Tell me just briefly about the senior research project at Wooster, because I know that is such a central component of the education there.
Yeah, sure. So we are, one of the only colleges, I think, in the country still that every student must do a senior research project. So it's really democratized. It's not students in the honors college will do. At Wooster, there is no honors college. So every student does a senior research project. And the projects can be, some students write a book. I mean, I listened to a student give a presentation about the book he wrote. Just lovely piece of fiction, and he described it. Other students, one of my students that works for me built his own computer. And so when he was presenting his project, there he was with his computer right in front of him, right? And he had to sort of explain, here's the reason I wanted to do this, and here's what I did. Very frequently, students are working on research that is their own creative endeavor, right? So I have just been in awe of some of the things that our students propose as research projects. A couple of years ago, a student athlete was doing a psychological study on which athlete endorses which brand of shoes and whether or not one athlete would sell more than the other, basically. Just sort of a brand recognition. And if you link an athlete to that brand, what can you expect? And it was a really interesting project. But these projects can be across the board. The thing I think our students who go through this process don't quite know yet at 22 years old when they're doing it. They don't understand that the quality of their work on these projects is akin to a master's thesis level. And it takes them a while to understand that, one, not everybody does a project like this. And two, almost nobody gets the kind of attention and mentorship that they get because they have a one-on-one mentorship with a faculty member. And then three, they really are doing high quality, high caliber research typically that the folks in master's and PhD level would say, yeah, this is acceptable for our master's program. So it's an intense year-long project. They start, sometimes they start thinking about it the year before in their junior IS class. They may start working, collecting data during the summer between their junior and senior year, but for the most part, students start in August when they come back. They work with their advisor to propose it. They take it from the very early stages all the way through to the end where they've got results to present. They do a presentation at the end. They do a conversation with their faculty and their second reader that we on campus, some of us call a defense, others just call a conversation. But literally, they're going through that project very much in the same way I did my master's thesis. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's a really unique component, I think, for Wooster and one of its real strengths. What kind of students do you think would be the most successful at Wooster, who would most benefit from these types of experiences?
Yeah. So I think it's got to be a student who likes small, right? So we are a small campus. I know that we've occasionally had students who have come to Wooster and said, wow, it's smaller than I thought it was. So we do want students who sort of understand what the environment looks like. It's small. They're going to know everybody on campus. Everybody's going to know them. And there's a real bonus to that. One of the key bonuses, I think, of a small institution is faculty know you. Faculty develop relationships with you, and these are the people who are writing your letters of recommendation, right? Or giving recommendations for jobs. So I think that's important. I think that Wooster students are a little bit on the special side because they come in knowing that senior project is waiting for them, right? And that means that they tend to be pretty serious students from the beginning. They take their work and their classes seriously. They look for ways to grow. They look for ways to challenge themselves intellectually. It's also interesting that in some environments, you could conceive of that as being very competitive. So students are competing with each other. They want to be the top of the class. And I don't get that vibe here. So I think a student with those kinds of serious sort of penchants for academics, I think if they're looking for a collaborative environment, a supportive environment for that, Wooster's the place to come. We are independent minds working together after all. And so those independent minds, I see students helping each other. I mean, we have in Apex alone about 100 peer advisors. That tells you that our students want to serve in that way. And they learn a lot through that peer-to-peer mentoring. But it's really, I think, in their nature to want to have an environment that is that collaborative. I think we want students who are willing to look for opportunities, so see what's available and then go after that opportunity. These students do really well. We talk about in Apex, we talk about our super users. So it might be somebody who started out, coming in for study skills and then looked for an internship and decided that, maybe I could do a study away that has an internship. So they went to Geo. And while they were doing their study away internship, before they went, they talked to an academic advisor who mapped out their 4 years with them. While they were studying away, they figured a way to solve a problem that the world has. So they came back to talk to Dr. Abramo about impact entrepreneurship, right? These are people who have found somebody in every office, and they talk with each person, usually with the last year being constantly in career planning, talking to career planning. Although we do want students, all 4 years to be in talking with us, but really having deep conversations about how do I find something that fits my skills and the things I think I can do for the world with purpose, and helping me move forward. These are students who have they really do they want to have an impact on the world. And they've got pretty lofty goals for that. And as I see them getting ready to launch, you see them as 18-year-olds. This is what I love about my business, right? 18-year-olds, they're still children. They are reliant on their parents in so many ways. And they need to develop self-efficacy and self-advocacy, right? And so much of what we do in Apex is start with them as children and really kind of gently lead them and scaffold them into adulthood. And it's just one of the most joyful things to watch a student walk across the stage knowing I know what you looked like at 18 and what you came in with at 18, and I am amazed by who you are at 22. And I will continue to be amazed the rest of my life by who you are, right? There's nothing like it.
That sounds great. I know you've already given some advice for parents and for students, but what about college counselors? We have a lot of college counselors who listen to our podcast.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I get to meet a big group of you guys and talk to you guys each year. So I am loving the kinds of things that you do with students and the work that you do with students, because I do think you're looking at what's going to be a really good fit for this particular student. Again, so different than what I experienced, which is one guidance counselor working with, 200 students in my senior class and trying to get us, placed someplace without really knowing who we were. I think the work that college counselors, especially independent counselors, are doing these days is they really have the opportunity to get to know the student, to get to know the student's needs, to get to know their own expectations about what college will be, and then sort of thinking, this is why you probably go to all these college tours, right? Thinking about, I've got exactly the student that would fit well here, right? So that matchup, I think, is really pretty tremendous. Can I say one more thing not to ask students about?
Yes, ma'am.
Or not to tell students? Maybe it's not to tell students. I don't want students to come to college thinking that their career is going to be the thing they're passionate about. And this is people still do this all the time, and they're really sold on it. Do what you're passionate about, which is fine to a point, right? But I'll give you an example. My daughter is a musician, and a really good musician, and she is a passionate musician. But at some point, she realized that being a passionate musician was probably not going to pay her bills and enable her to eat. And so she really she struggled with that, right? I want to major in music, but I'm not. She's very pragmatic, much more so than her mother is. And so she struggled with this decision. What do I do? What do I major in? If I can't do what I'm passionate about, I'm lost in the world, because the idea is that what we come to the table with, because it's been pounded in, is everybody's doing what they're passionate about. Some of us are lucky, and we are, and it's luck, right? But for others, what are you doing that's meaningful? Are you doing something in your career that is meaningful to you? And do you have space in your life to do the thing that you're passionate about? And I think those can be two very different things. I happen to be lucky, and I'm pretty passionate about my work, but I have other passions, right? So, I have to do those on the outside, right? So I think if we can change the conversation again to a little bit of, what are some things that you would find to be meaningful? And if you could see yourself doing that would sustain you, and then the thing that really feeds your soul is something that you do outside your work, maybe. I would love to see a switch in the conversation a little bit there. Yeah.
That is a great point. And I think, we hear from colleges that they are looking for candidates who are following their passion. And again, I'm like, well, I don't necessarily think I knew I wanted to be a psychologist when I was 16. And I certainly was not passionate about it, but whatever, but that's another kind of myth.
Yeah.
And if a person is required to pick a passion and follow that at 15, let's say, they're not exploring all the other kinds of fun things that maybe they would even be more passionate about.
Right.
Because they used up all their time. So I feel like that is a great point, and it's more about what is meaningful to you. There are a lot of really meaningful jobs that are not pleasant in every single moment of them, I would say.
Right. I would
but
say
are nonetheless, yes, thinking of my own. I mean, they're nonetheless, we value highly, they are important, but, I don't really feel passionate about insurance billing. except perhaps in a rageful passion from time to time.
Right.
But, but that is necessary. So I think it is kind of this idea that you're just going to find this job, you're going to do this thing, and you're going to love it, and it's just going to be transcendent and amazing. It's cutting people off, and it's not reality.
Right. I also, much like I said earlier, I think we need to, and maybe counselors can help with this conversation, the notion that you're not going to have one track through life. When I talked to my own children about this, I told them, in this household, you're looking at the freak. I'm the freak, because I've been in a job, really in one sort of position, for nearly 30 years. I've worked in higher education my entire career. Although I'm not as immersed in the classroom as I used to be, I'm still relying on the same skill set, right? And I'm getting to do the same kind of work that gets me interacting with students. So I'm the weird one. Most people I know have had 3 or 4 careers, and my children are likely to have 8 or 10, some of which are things that don't exist right now.
Yes.
So if we can just sort of get them to think about, we are more than one thing. And how do we plan for being adaptable and flexible, and being willing to totally shift perspectives when opportunities arise? That was the message I tried to give to my kids. Unfortunately, they were hearing from everybody else, yeah, but what are you going to major in?
Of course. Yeah, no one listens to their parents anyway, especially as teenagers.
That's right.
No matter how wonderful the message is.
Exactly.
Well, this has been great. But as you know, no guest on Your College Bound Kid gets to escape the interview without being on the hot seat.
All right.
Where we ask you, kind of trivial questions just to get to know you a little better. And I guess I'll start with this one. You mentioned that, you're the freak and that you've only had one career, and that many people have had different, lots of careers. But if you couldn't do what you're doing now and you had to pick something else, what would it be?
Oh gosh. So I've had so many ideas about this. Probably 15 years ago, I would have said, I'll go back to med school and I'll be a doctor, right? I'll be an MD. And then I would have realized, well, that's just stupid. I don't have the energy for that. But it's an interest of mine. And probably about 20 years, I would have said, I'll be a yoga instructor. That sounds really cool. And that might still be on the top of the list right now. But I also think I really like to bake. And wouldn't it be great if I could spend my day baking? So maybe baking and yoga. And I guess I would need the yoga to take care of all the things I'm eating while I'm baking. Yeah.
I'm trying to see if I could weave medicine into this too, but I got to work on that somewhere. It's conceptually, it's a little tricky, but
yeah, it is a little tricky. Yeah.
But yeah, that yoga and baking are both great choices.
Yeah.
So to go on AirPod decided to flee my ear. You could go on any trip that you wanted to, like a bucket.
If I could go on any trip I wanted, where would I go? Oh, gosh. So I've been super lucky that I've been able to travel a lot. Okay, but it's easy. New Zealand. Yeah, that's it's been on my bucket list since I was in high school. And I haven't been able to get there yet. So that's definitely the place I would go.
Yeah, that's their favorite place that they ever went on my bucket list also. What's a book that you've read that others read as well?
Oh my gosh, books. This is going to take me a while. Oh gosh. Here's one that I think I have given to students, and we actually teach a course using it as a textbook, I would have everybody read Designing Your Life. It's a really simple book with some really simple, good exercises to get people thinking kind of creatively about, where are you in your life, and are there some things that that give you energy that you're not experiencing? Are the things that you are experiencing draining your energy? It has you thinking about what gives you or puts you in a state of flow where your concentration is just all in. We've used that with students, and one of the things that comes out of it is an Odyssey plan. And so I'm laughing a little bit as we talked about yoga and baking in med school. In an Odyssey plan, you could actually combine those three things and draw a picture and sort of map out how you would do that. So
Well, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Dr. about the wonderful program. I'm sure helps so many students at the College of Wooster to visit the museum next spring. And I would love it if we could, I could get to see the office at now in mine. But thank you. We're really going to find this helpful.
Great. Thank you. It was great to be with you.
On Thursday's episode, Ju and I continue with part 2. The excellent New York Times article, Study of Elite College Admissions Data Suggests Being Very Rich is Its Own Qualification, in part 2 of 2. Question that was supposed to run last week, but I promise you it'll run this week, from a listener. An anonymous listener wants to know, is it better to go for the higher GPA or take the courses you want to take? And the interview is with Evan Mandery. Evan Mandery is the author of 8 books, including 4 novels, as well as the co-creator and executive producer of the TV series Artificial, for which he won a Peabody and Emmy Awards in 2019. He's also author of the book Poison Ivy, about the Ivy League and Ivy peer institutions, and that is the book Lisa and Evan will discuss. And we close out with Lisa and Linda having part 2 of the spotlight that Lisa does on SCAD, also known as Savannah College of Art and Design. Friends, U.S. News analyzed 150 of the most populous metro areas to find the best places to live. And of course, they had to rank them. I mean, they've sold so many college magazines on best colleges. Why not turn your attention to best places to live? And like with the college edition, they came up with their formula, and they ascribed different weight to the formula about the best places to live. And you can read, just like with the college edition, what their formula is and how they decide to rank. Well, I was looking at the 2023-24 edition. The number 1 place they say to live in the country, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Green Bay may be fantastic. No shade on Green Bay. It's not for me. It's too cold. The number 2 place they say to live in the entire country, Huntsville, Alabama. Now, I realize it's a tech boom there, and I realize Huntsville's different from other parts of Alabama. But I'm sorry, I'm not interested in living at a place Trump won by 30 points, personally. So, friends, when it comes to best places to live, it's very easy to say, I dismiss that formula. I'm going to use my own judgment. But for some reason, we don't do that when it comes to colleges. We let others dictate who's beautiful and who's not by imposing their own formula on us, as opposed to us taking control and say, I categorically reject that. Green Bay, Wisconsin is not the best place for me. Huntsville, Alabama is not the second best place for me. I will decide what's best for me, and not a magazine. Remember, friends, college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us, and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcasts. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.